right guy. Allman in the Morning. Common Sense Radio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6.
You like these sunglasses?
I do.
These are from my friends at Popticles. It's a brand new thing. These are fold-up sunglasses for the active person. Pack small, live big. I'm wearing them on the Arrowhead Building Supply webcam there. And I'm going to...
They fit in that thing? I didn't see you take them out, so I missed it.
I can fold them up, put them in this little egg.
Very
boom.
cool.
And I could wear it on my belt if I wanted to.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
And they're great vinyl lenses. And they're made by this... They're designed, basically, the same company, the guy who made the Furminator. Remember the Furminator? World famous dog brush. The Furminator. Unbelievable technology. And this technology is awesome, too. It's fold-up sunglasses.
You look like you're going on a boat.
I am going on a boat. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Wallace back in action. Boy, I'll tell you, when you don't appear like a week, people miss you. They wonder where you were.
Let me ask a question. I'm not asking this to be, to get a compliment. Is this a popular segment?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
No, it really is. I mean, but when you're not on, like for instance, keep in mind, you and I had a very nice conversation the last time we spoke, and it was fun. It was energetic. It was back and forth. It was great. And then you weren't on for a couple of weeks because you were busy. Believe me, I pay attention because if I hear you on Killmate and you're not on with me, I'm like going, okay, what was he doing? So, and people thought maybe you were mad at me or something.
No,
I know,
but
I
think I was making a speech or something.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah, no, but people actually do they're very concerned when you're not on. It's great. It's fantastic. So
good.
I'm glad to have you.
Well, I'm back.
I know
we better have something good to do.
Well, this week was remarkable, honestly, just in observing some of the machinations of foreign policy, whether it be the Tomahawk missile launches or the meeting in Russia, the China situation, the North Korean situation. I mean, this is pretty amazing.
Well, and more than that, I will tell you, people always kind of like to know what's going on in Washington. There is the prevailing narrative is that Donald Trump is, and this was in the front page of the New York Times and the Washington Post today, that Donald Trump is switching, that he's moving to the center, moving away. Now, I'm just telling you, folks, don't get upset with me. This is what people are talking about in Washington, and there is some reason to understand it, that he seems to be, there have been sort of two wings in the party. There's the Jared Kushner, Wall Street, establishment, Democrat, New Yorker wing, and then there's the nationalist, alt-right, populist Steve Bannon wing. And right now, people are suggesting that maybe the former, the establishment wing, is leading, not just because of foreign policy. Remember, this is a president who campaigned against NATO. Yesterday, he said that NATO is no longer obsolete. He campaigned against China, talked about currency manipulation. Now he says China is no longer a currency manipulator, and of course, we took the action in Syria, but also on some other issues in terms of reaching out to Democrats, currency manipulation. Now he's talking about how he likes Janet Yellen at the Federal Reserve. He's talking about the Export-Import Bank. So, this could last because we see this president, it doesn't always chart a steady course. Not to say that's right or wrong, it just is the way it is. But that's the prevailing narrative inside the Beltway, is this president is moving to the center.
Well, let me posit this narrative.
Posit ahead.
That you might disagree with. But for those of us who have been avid Trump supporters...
Oh, geez, here we go again. Yes, you were on the Trump train before I was.
No, what I'm trying to say is, to us, this is typical President Trump action. This is typical brokering. For instance, we see, China, even though he has not been boastful of the currency manipulation angle, we see China actually changing its monetary policy on its own. I mean...
Well, in fairness, China had changed its monetary policy some time ago. I mean, this was not in response to Trump. That's one of the problems. And a lot of people were saying this during the campaign. China was a currency manipulator, but it really hasn't been for some period of time.
I see, because I mean it's liquefying it, doing a lot of liquidation, those kind of things. But
I think they're not purposely
responding,
keeping the yuan.
Right.
That's how you pronounce it, low. So
right.
in other words, they're letting it trade on a more market-based level, which makes its imports or its exports, our imports to us, not so artificially cheap.
Wouldn't it be great if yuan was Mexican currency? Because it sounds like that would be. Anyway, so here's the thing. What I'm saying.
All right. I don't think that triggers the thing, but get ready. Put your finger on the card. So that
I know. I tried to speak over that just so I didn't. But here's the thing. Let's look at the NATO situation, for instance. It's almost like he got what he wanted. I mean, with all the threats and all the bad talk about NATO, then you have that joint news conference, and you have the NATO guys that are going, yeah, you know what? We are going to contribute more to our own economies, our own military budgets, and that kind of thing.
My own feeling would be that on NATO, I'd give him say it about 50-50. In terms of contributing more, there is no question that the pressure he has put on has had an impact, and I'll give him props for that. On the question of saying, well, NATO was obsolete because it wasn't involved in terror, and I came in and now they've changed. That's not true. I mean, NATO has lost over 1,000 fighting men and women in Afghanistan since 9/11. So I mean, they've been fighting terrorism long before Donald Trump came on the scene. But on the contributions, there's no question. He's right there.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, to watch what's going on with North Korea and their responses. But now let me go back to the inside thing that you talked with Bannon. I know that there's a story out there that somehow Bannon is on the outs, but believe me, I have no doubt that Bannon is remaining a big part of the Trump administration, and actually a lot of us are hoping he is, because he keeps the neocons like Lindsey Graham and the other warmongers kind of at bay, and so we like that.
Well, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm just saying though that's the and I'm not saying Bannon should or shouldn't. I would say that look, Donald Trump. Now you can argue maybe. I think Trump is in his own way, and some people call him a boob. I think he, in many respects, is a kind of genius. And but he did, unsolicited, have an interview with the New York Post yesterday, in which he basically took Bannon to the woodshed and said, he's a nice guy. He came on the campaign long after I did. After he had been running, and he said, I'm my own strategist. And I do think that he very much resented the idea that Bannon was the puppeteer and pulling the strings. And I will tell you, in terms of a lot of this nationalist stuff, particularly when it comes to trade, Trump was saying that long before he'd ever heard of Steve Bannon.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that Steve Bannon, actually, that was Bannon's attraction to the Trump campaign was him hearing them talk like that.
But can I tell you something? I think Bannon made a huge miscalculation when he did that story with Time magazine, and he ended up on the cover of Time. There's only one star in this show, and it's the president, and he don't like sharing the spotlight.
Yeah,
he really didn't like the idea that was out there, and you could say whether this was Bannon pushing it or others, but Bannon wasn't running away from it, that he was the kind of Svengali behind the scenes.
What do you think is going to be in the offing off of foreign policy now with tax reform? Because I will give you the angle from this end, and that is that if the Republicans wind up fighting him and failing on tax reform, it's going to be a bad thing come 2018 for Republicans.
Oh, I think Republicans are in some trouble already. I think one, this president, and I know I'm just reporting the facts here, guys. He's not popular. He's at 40%. He's got the lowest approval rating of any first year president ever, and you've got Republicans who are fighting him on a lot of issues. So you've got a lot of people who don't like Trump, and the ones who do like Trump are going to be mad at conservatives for opposing his agenda, on Obamacare, repeal and replace. Even if you don't like every part of the bill, I mean, I think it was a terrible mistake not to pass something and get it to the Senate and try to work out a compromise that everybody could agree on. These Republicans have been talking about this for 7 years, and they can't come up with a repeal and replace plan. I don't think that's very good. And as far as tax reform, I agree with you. I mean, that's a real question. Is there a governing majority in the Republican Party in Congress? Are there enough Republicans to pass a bill through the House and pass it through the Senate without any Democratic support, and they're not going to get any? There's a real question about that.
Well, I don't want to get into another fight with you over this because we talked about this the last time we talked, but I do think that President Trump will be the last person that a lot of voters blame in 2018, and that these guys are the ones who are going to pay. And
well, I totally agree with you. In addition to which, there's a nice little fact here, which is that Trump isn't running in 2018. They are. So they can't. But some people will take it out. Their feelings about him, they will take out on them. Look, I just think it's a bad thing. If you've been given the keys to the car, drive the car. And at this point, between the White House and the Senate, they're not driving the car.
That's true. I mean, the Gorsuch deal was probably the biggest success, but that was
no question about it. That was a big success. But that's not for 100 days. That's not a lot.
Yeah. Well, now here's the other thing. And this might sound kooky, but the reality is, if you're President Trump and you're dealing with the Republican Party and in some cases even the Freedom Caucus that do not want to go along even with your corporate tax reductions, because some of these guys aren't even for the 15%. They want it higher. Is it in his mind, do you think it's, okay, well then I don't care whether Democrats wind up with a majority in the House because I'll negotiate with them and get 60% of what I want as opposed to 0% with the Republicans?
Look, but I don't think he should sit there and wait till 2018. I think he should start negotiating with Democrats now. Ronald Reagan, the secret to his success, and they had a minority, not a majority, in the House in his first 2 years, is they got these conservative Democrats. They were called boll-weevil Democrats, and he pulled them away from Tip O'Neill, who was, everybody talks about, Reagan and O'Neill worked things out. No, Reagan stole some Democrats from Tip O'Neill and got them on board and was able to pass tax cuts and spending cuts and all of that. I've never understood why this president, he's not a particularly Republican president anyway. He's kind of, post-partisan, post-ideological, so push your plan and get, there are plenty of Democrats who I'm sure are either one, scared of them because they're worried that they'll lose their districts, or may agree with them. And I don't know why he hasn't been reaching out to them already. I think he ought to go bipartisan. And by that I don't mean go liberal or soften his position, but he ought to find the sweet spot, and I think there is one, where you're able to pass some of these bills with moderate to conservative Democratic support. Now, there's no question with the way the Congress has worked and gerrymandering of districts and stuff that it's become the Republicans have become more conservative and the Democrats more liberal, but there are some moderate to conservative Democrats out there. Why not try and pick them up?
Well, because in my opinion, sometimes even with tax reform, it's better than zero. I mean, that's all I'm saying. And so sometimes, like with President Reagan, he figured, well, if I get a little, that's better than nothing.
Well, so you and I were in agreement.
Yeah, to a certain degree, yeah. Because and I'm glad you pointed out that this isn't a call for him to moderate his position, but the people who voted for him because we wanted action. And if I'd rather have 60% of the action than zero.
Well, Reagan, I think it was 80%. But, he always used to say, I'll take 80%, and then I'll come back and try to get the rest. And, that's the art of compromise. That's the art of legislating in Washington. And I agree with you. I mean, if we're a year from now and they haven't passed Obamacare repeal and replace, or tax reform, or infrastructure, there's going to be heck to pay, and I think it'll be the Republican Party that pays it. And I think people will say, we gave exactly what I said, that we gave you the keys to the car, and you've kept it in the garage because you can't agree on who should sit behind the steering wheel.
Well, after having just done my taxes, I don't need 80. I just want 60%. I mean, I don't care. I'll take 50%. I want something.
Well, no, government takes 50%.
Yeah, that's true. Boy, and you know what?
Can I tell you one quick funny story about that? So I have a daughter, as I suspect a lot of you listening to, who's very liberal, and I'm going to clean this story up slightly. So, and you know, she's never met a social program she doesn't like. This is well before Trump. This is 10 years ago, and she's, you know, very. I guess at that point it was Bush was president. She hated Bush. Blah blah blah, and so she's working for the summer as an intern and getting paid. And she gets her first check, and she says, "What the blank is FICA?" And I said, "Well, FICA is withholding tax, dear. That's what, you know, is paid." And, you know, because she thought she was going to get, I don't know, $150, and suddenly she's getting $82 a week, and she was really ticked. And I said, "Well, now you begin to understand." So,
well,
you know, all you need is to see the government withholding all of that money from you, and suddenly big government and social programs don't seem quite as attractive as they used to.
Well, that's why I tell my 12-year-old son, I explain to him that Dad is working 3 days a week for the government exclusively, right. and that's just the reality.
Or till April or whatever it is. I forget what tax day is.
Yeah, I'm telling you. And boy, look at the old days when they called them boll weevil Democrats.
That's what they were. Charlie Stenholm from Texas was one of them, But you see, part of that, and this is where I get back to this question of popularity. Part of that was that Reagan was an enormously popular guy, and if you remember, he used to give these speeches to the nation, and then he used to say, "And please call your congressman," and the phones would ring off the hook in congressional. I mean, first of all, it was a different time. It was
right.
1981 and 2, so it's a long, long time ago. But you know, he did have the power of the people, and that doesn't exist with this president yet. I don't think he's got.
Yeah,
that kind of clout, and in a lot of these districts, and this is another problem with the Republicans, even ones that he held, the conservative Republican Freedom Caucus congressman did better in his district than Trump did, so he's not sitting there worried about having to run on Trump's coattails.
Yeah, and those days when you named Democrats after a beetle.
There you go.
The boll weevil. I'm a boll weevil Democrat. I'm an alligator Republican. Sorry.
You, my friend, are a...
Yes!
Wow, you did it yourself. Wow.
Hey, always great to talk to you. We will be
always
watching.
Great. Yeah, we don't have guests yet. We're in the process trying to get somebody from the White House. This is a hard booking weekend, too, Easter weekend.
Oh, yeah.